Hi, I'm Aaron. I'm 31, a firefighter, the middle kid, the one who remembers birthdays and fixes leaking sinks. Last month, my whole family tried to rob me at 3 a.m., using my sister's body like a crowbar. The call came like every emergency starts: way too early, way too loud. 3:04 a.m. My phone skittered off the nightstand and hit the floor. I was already grabbing it because in this line of work, you learn, bad news never waits for voicemail. Mom's voice shredded through the speaker like she'd been crying and chain-smoking at the same time. Aaron! It's Jess. She's in the hospital. You need to send $22,000 immediately or they'll leave her without support and stick him with all the bills. I sat up in bed so fast my neck cracked. What? What happened? Don't argue, she snapped. Just send it. You're the only one with savings. You're the only one who... Another voice in the background. My dad. Weary mean. If he cared, he'd already be wiring it. Don't waste time explaining to a hero. My brain short-circuited. My chest was pounding. My bare feet hit the cold floor. I blinked at the red numbers on the microwave across the tiny apartment. 3:05 a.m. This was happening. I said 5 words that blew up my entire family. Call your perfect son, Evan. Then I hung up. Laid back down. Didn't move. I stared at the ceiling. At the hairline crack I never patched. The one that looked like a fault line, like maybe this whole building could split open under the right kind of pressure. My phone buzzed 3 more times. I didn't look. I shoved it under my pillow like it was a siren I could smother. I didn't sleep. Not really. I just lay there, wide-eyed, like I was between calls on a rig. When I opened. Brain flooded. Why $22,000? Why me? Why didn't she say please? Why did my dad sound like he practiced that line? At 7:11 a.m., the phone rang again. Different number. A clipped voice. This is Sergeant Kovalchuk from the 12th Precinct. Is this Aaron, last name? Yeah, I said, heartbeat in my throat. We need you to come down to the station. It's regarding last night. Your sister, and your parents. I didn't ask. I just slid into my boots and said, I'll be there in 10. Because here's what I know, in fire, we say don't breathe until you find clean air. But in families like mine, you're lucky to find air at all. The police station smelled like coffee that had been poured and forgotten. A metal desk, a water ring the shape of a thumbprint. The sergeant looked up at me like he already knew the story but wanted to hear how I'd tell it. You're the brother, he said. Yeah. What happened? He slid a notepad toward me. Your sister Jessica was brought in around 2:17 a.m. Panic attack, mild dehydration, and traces of oxycodone in her system. She's stable. Awake. My body didn't move, but something inside me folded. Is she okay now? She's asking for you. Says she didn't know they were going to call. Says she didn't know anything about the card. I froze. What card? The sergeant's face didn't change. He turned the notepad toward me and pointed to a list of account numbers. I recognized the first. My emergency credit card. The one I kept taped behind a drawer in my kitchen. The second? A prepaid cell. The third? Evan's old checking account from when he still thought he was starting a food truck. Sergeant Kovalchuk tapped the page. Someone ran small test charges on these 3. Then last night, a cash advance for $2,000 at an ATM near the hospital. Declined. He flipped the page. Then a successful withdrawal for $200. Card ending in 4881. My emergency card. I couldn't speak. Couldn't breathe. We pulled the camera, he said. It was your father. It didn't land at first. I mean, you grow up thinking the word father means protector. It means provider. It means the guy who tells you to check the oil and wear a jacket and stand up straight. You don't grow up expecting that one day it'll be the man who tries to empty your account at a gas station while your sister is unconscious in a hospital. I finally whispered. Jess didn't know? She says no, he said. She woke up and asked someone to call you. Your mother took the phone. Told the nurse you'd handle it. My hands curled into fists in my lap. I felt like I'd swallowed a lit match. Then he slid something across the table in a plastic bag. It was a folded sticky note. My handwriting on one side, Wi-Fi plus PIN. The kind of thing you scribble without thinking and stick to the fridge. On the back? A list of numbers. 4-digit blocks. My card. My backup card. My bank access PIN. Where'd you find this? I croaked. Your sister's old bag. Mixed in with some receipts and a charger. My stomach dropped. I knew the bag. I knew the note. I remembered writing it. Leaving it. Trusting it. My family didn't pick a lock. They didn't break a window. They just flipped over my kindness and wrote their own plans on the back. The sergeant leaned in. This is the part where I ask if you want to file charges. And that was it. That was the moment. Because I could feel the old script rising in me like smoke. Just clean it up. Just pay. Just fix it like you always do. Just forgive. But the truth? I was tired of being a rescue plan in boots. What happens if I do? I asked. Fraud. Identity theft. Attempted theft. The hospital's filing their own report over the harassment call. And if I don't? They walk out. And they'll do it again. Maybe not to you. Maybe to someone who can't afford to survive it. I stared at my own handwriting through the bag. And I said, quiet but firm, file it. On both of them. The door slammed open like a scene from a drama that didn't know it was real life. My mother swept in, hair perfect, eyes lit with performance rage. The kind that comes with a fresh lipstick and a practice script. Behind her, Dad stalked in slow, like he was entering a courtroom he thought he owned. Aaron. She hissed, like my name had just become a slur. What is this? They're saying you accused us of stealing. Of fraud? You must have misunderstood. You were half asleep. Confused. She turned to the sergeant, her smile so saccharine I could smell it. Officer, this is a family matter. We're not criminals. This is all a big. I cut in. You tried to take my money. She laughed. One sharp, humorless bark. Money? Jess is sick. What's wrong with you? I looked at her fully for the first time in years. Not at the stories she told about herself, not at the face that once promised me cookies and comfort. What's wrong with me? I said slowly. Is that you expected I'd say yes before you even asked? That's when her expression cracked. We weren't in her play anymore. She hadn't written this scene. Dad stepped forward like backup. Real brave, son. Hiding behind paperwork. There it was. The tone. The edge. That smirk he saved for people he thought owed him something. I looked him in the eye. Stop calling me son. I'm Aaron. That flickered something in him. His smirk twitched like it wanted to turn into something meaner, but wasn't sure how. Mom's mouth opened to start another monologue, but I shook my head. No more. Not today. I slid the form back to the sergeant, my signature dark and clear across the bottom. It didn't look like regret. It looked like a door finally closed. I walked out of the station like I just crawled out of a house that was still burning. The sun outside was too bright for what the morning felt like. Back at the firehouse, nobody asked questions. That's the thing about firemen, we know how to recognize smoke without asking what started it. They handed me coffee. My captain dropped a donut by my elbow. Hydrant drill at 10, he said. Join if you need noise. I nodded. I needed noise. Anything but the echo of my mother's voice saying you're dead to us, which, for the record, came 4 hours later in a voicemail. And in case you're wondering? Yes, I saved it. Not out of sentiment. Evidence. Later that afternoon, Jess texted me from a hospital-issued phone. I'm sorry. I didn't know about the cards. I swear. I told them to ask you. I didn't know they already had your numbers. Please don't hate me. Then, they want me to go to a program. I think I should. I replied. You should. I'll help with the program. Not with lies. She sent back a crying emoji and a heart. I stared at the phone until my knuckles went white. Because that's the thing no one tells you about being the reliable one. It's not the fire that burns you. It's the hope that maybe this time, it won't. That night I went home and made a list. Not a to-do list. Not a grocery list. A different kind. Things that are mine. It was short. My name. My paycheck. My sleep. My quiet. The air I breathe when nobody's tugging on the back of my shirt demanding a favor disguised as love. I wrote it on the back of an old shift calendar and taped it to the inside of my pantry door. Somewhere private. Somewhere sacred. Then I pulled the Wi-Fi sticky note off the fridge, crumpled it, and tossed it in the trash like it still had fingerprints on it. After that, I got to work locking things down. Froze the emergency card. Changed every password. Called the bank and added a security phrase only I would know, and no, it wasn't something stupid like a pet name or a birthday. It was the make and model of my first turnout coat. Nobody in my family ever remembered it anyway. 3 days went by without a call from Jess. Then I got a message from her counselor. With permission. Just a brief update. She'd entered the 30-day program. Detox was brutal. She didn't want visitors yet, but asked if I could drop off a hoodie. I found my old station sweatshirt. The one with a bleach mark over the pocket and a hole in the sleeve. I left it at the desk with her name written on the tag. Didn't ask to see her. Didn't ask to talk. Sometimes love is silence without guilt. Meanwhile, the rest of the family had detonated. My aunt sent a group text to the extended family. We'll be discussing this at Sunday dinner. We settle things in this family the old-fashioned way. I replied. We don't settle crimes over pot roast. No one responded after that. That Friday, Evan showed up outside the station, leaning against his car like a magazine ad for bad decisions. Aviators on. Cheap watch glinting like a lie. I saw him through the bay doors and stepped outside before any of the guys could see me go full wildfire. Bro, he said, hands raised like I was the one holding a weapon. This went too far. Mom freaked. Dad panicked. Jess was sick. You know how they are. I just stared at him. You really pressing charges? He asked, trying to sound shocked. Like I had started the fire. You used my numbers. He squinted at me like I was overreacting. I might have taken a pic of your card once. For emergencies. You're not the emergency, I said. You're the one who sets the fire and calls it weather. That one hit. He winced. Just for a second. Then he laughed. Spare me the firefighter metaphors. Just call the station and say it was a mistake. It wasn't. He stepped closer. I could smell the cologne he couldn't afford. I'm your brother. No. You're a guy who thinks I'm a bank with a heartbeat. He glared. Fine. You want to play hardball? When Dad cut you off senior year, who let you crash on my couch? You charged me rent for a couch with springs. I said. Then borrowed that rent money for gas. He flinched again. This time deeper. Not because it wasn't true, but because I remembered. He tried one last move. You know Mom's heart isn't great. This stress. Stop, I said. No more bodies in front of the truck. Not hers. Not Jess's. Not mine. He stared. I let him. Then he got in his car and sped off like he'd won something. He hadn't. A week later, the show really began. Mom entered her Broadway martyr era. She called every aunt, cousin, former neighbor, and second-grade teacher who'd ever liked a family Facebook photo. She told them all different versions of the story. In one, I misunderstood a medical emergency. In another, the bank made a mistake. For the church crowd, I was lost to pride and turning against the family that raised me. Not one version mentioned the sticky note with my pin scribbled on the back, or my dad's face on a hospital ATM camera, or the 2 a.m. voicemail that sounded more like a ransom demand than concern. I didn't bother correcting anyone. I let the paper trail do the talking. The sergeant called midweek to say the case was moving. Cards flagged. Reports filed. Court date in 6 weeks. He also added, Your sister wants to know if you'll bring her a hoodie. I already did, I said. That night, I went for a run. Not to escape. Just to feel my lungs stretch without someone else's expectations pressed against my ribs. When I got home, I made another list. Things I don't know. An apology for protecting myself. A yes that sets me on fire. A seat at a table where I'm the meal. A loan disguised as love. Another ounce of guilt for surviving. I taped that one inside the medicine cabinet. Because sometimes, healing requires a mirror. Then came the kicker. Thursday afternoon, a dry voice called from a number I didn't recognize. Collections for Mr. Evan, last name. He listed you as a co-signer for a truck loan. We just need to confirm some information. I nearly choked on my coffee. I didn't sign anything, I said. Send me the document. It came by email. A blurry PDF with a signature that looked like a child's imitation of mine after 3 espressos. I replied with the police report number and the name of the detective. 10 minutes later. We apologize for the inconvenience. The application has been withdrawn. I laughed. Alone in my kitchen. The sound startled me. It was loud. Real. Almost joyful. The first real laugh I'd made in months. The next day, the precinct called again. Not about the loan. About my mom. She submitted a new statement, the sergeant said. Full of holes. We'll need a supplemental from you. Can you come in? Yeah, I said. Same boots as last time. When I arrived, I could hear Dad before I saw him. Loud, sneering, talking to someone in the hallway. Kid thinks he's a saint, he said. Wants to teach us a lesson. I stared at the table in the interview room, waiting for my reflection to settle. Then I asked the sergeant if I could say one thing to them when we were done. He hesitated. Then nodded. Short. I stepped out into the hallway. They both turned like the room had tilted toward me. Like gravity had remembered I existed. Dad's jaw loaded a bullet. Mom's eyes already shimmered with wet ammunition. I raised a hand. Don't. I just came to say 2 sentences. They went still. Not because they respected me, but because they didn't know the script. First, I said, I love Jess, and I'll help her get healthy. Mom's face twitched like she was waiting for the second punch. Second, I'm done funding lies, threats, and emergencies you engineer. I looked directly at Mom. If your heart hurts, see a doctor. If your pride hurts, sit with it. Dad scoffed. You think you're better than us? No, I said. I think I'm exactly who I've always been. The one who does the hard thing. Only now, the hard thing is not rescuing you. I turned and walked away. Didn't wait for their replies. Didn't need to. Outside, the air smelled like rain. I let it. A month later, the court came down like a ceiling fan with 2 blades missing. Not pretty, not perfect, but enough to make a breeze. My parents pled to a lesser charge, attempted fraud with restitution, a mandatory class about financial exploitation, which I'm sure they'll treat like jury duty, and a 90-day no-contact order unless it goes through a court mediator. 90 days. Sounds short unless you've never had a quiet week in your life. To me, 90 days is an ocean. Jess completed her 30-day program. She looked like herself again, the version before the pills, before the wrong guys, before every conversation with our parents was a guilt sale dressed in "How are yous?" We met on a bench outside her meeting, 2 coffees between us we didn't need, and sunlight we did. She tapped her cup. I'm sorry I became another emergency. You weren't, I said. You were a person in pain. She nodded. I took your charger. I smiled. You can take my charger. You can't take my name. She looked down. I want to make it right. We'll make a plan, I said. You pay me back when you're steady. And if you ever feel yourself slipping, you call me before anyone who tries to sell you a story. She nodded so fast her messy bun bounced. Deal. That night, the firehouse threw me a celebration for passing the rope rescue certification. A grocery store cake with way too much frosting. A banner made from printer paper that said, "Not God," in red marker, because firefighters can't help themselves. One of the guys slapped me on the back and said, So you're gonna buy that lake cabin now? I shrugged. Maybe just book a weekend. They cheered like I'd proposed. That weekend, I drove up and sat on the dock with my feet in the water and my phone on Do Not Disturb. The quiet wrapped around me like a weighted blanket I'd never had as a kid. I stared at the trees. Thought about the last month. Thought about how strange it is to survive choosing yourself. Then, as if timed by a screenwriter, my phone buzzed with a photo from Jess. She was in a thrifted sweater, hair piled up, holding a little plastic coin that said 30 on it in shaky blue print. The message underneath: "I'm building a life that doesn't need saving." I stared at it so long my eyes blurred. Then I took a picture of the dock, feet in frame, lake glittering. Caption: "Me too." Monday morning back at the station, I found a stack of unopened envelopes on my locker shelf. The return address? My parents' house. Apparently Mom had graduated from phone calls to station-delivered letters, because nothing says healthy boundaries like sneaking around a restraining order using the postal service. I brought them to our admin, who logged them per the no-contact terms. I didn't read a single word. It felt like walking past a fire without turning my head. Like proof I no longer needed to see the flames to believe they existed. Later that week, Jess called, her voice brighter, like the static had finally cleared. "I found an apartment," she said. "Tiny, but the window's actually open." "You have furniture?" "Not really," she said. "But I have a lamp and a plant I haven't killed yet." "Then you're ahead of most people," I told her. She hesitated. "You okay?" I thought about it. About how I'd started sleeping again. Eating again. Thinking in full sentences instead of alert tones and damage reports. "Yeah," I said. "I think I'm finally coming home to myself." She sniffled and laughed at the same time. "That was a cheesy answer, firefighter." "Shut up and buy a couch," I said. "I'll help. But no loans." "No loans," she promised. That night, I taped one last list inside my closet door. Things I can do now. Sleep without checking the bank app. Say no without apology. Leave the room without looking back. Buy socks without guilt. Want things. Really want them. It was dumb. Small. But standing in that apartment, the one above the gym, the one I once hated for being temporary, I realized I'd made it permanent with something better than drywall. Boundaries. You don't always need to build a bigger life. Sometimes you just need to lock the damn doors. Friday morning, I got a voicemail from the sergeant. "Court followed up with your parents. They've started restitution payments. Checks go straight to the bank. No contact. Jess's program sent in a great report. Counselor says she's asking the right questions." I stood in the hallway with my turnout gear next to me and a cup of terrible station coffee in my hand, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel like someone's collateral. I felt like me. Then came the last aftershock. A young guy at the station, new kid, asked me during downtime, "Hey, what do you do when your family acts like they own your oxygen?" I smiled without thinking. "You get your own tank." He looked confused. I just patted his shoulder and walked back to the engine. He'd get it one day. 3 weeks later, Jess invited me to a potluck. It wasn't a family dinner. Not that kind. It was a group recovery thing. A folding table event in a church basement that smelled like hope and instant coffee. She brought baked ziti she couldn't stop apologizing for. I brought garlic bread and stayed mostly quiet, which fit the mood. At the end, they passed around a candle. Each person said something they'd learned about themselves. When it got to Jess, she held the flame and said, "I'm worth more than who I used to please." When it passed to me, I said, "You can love someone and still not hand them the matches." Afterward, she hugged me so tight my ribs creaked. "You really doing it?" she asked. "Doing what?" "Building your life. Like you said?" "Trying," I said. "Slow. Solid. Like a firebreak." That night I drove home with my windows down. Air in, noise out. No texts waiting. No threats. No apologies masquerading as guilt bombs. Just a quiet apartment, a clean inbox, and one envelope I did open, the rope rescue certificate. Framed it. Hung it right where the old sticky note used to be. A new kind of reminder. 2 months later, Jess hit 60 days clean. She took a real job at a clinic. Bought a futon off Craigslist. Texted me a photo of her living room, thrift store lamp, chipped bookshelf, walls empty but honest. Caption said, "Nothing borrowed, everything mine." The week after, I finally booked that trip to the lake cabin. I brought nothing but a duffel, a book I didn't read, and 3 breakfasts worth of eggs. On the last morning, I sat on the dock again, feet in the water, sunlight on my face. I didn't check the time. I didn't check the bank. I sat. And I breathed. Not the clipped, shallow kind you do when you're waiting for the next ask, the next alarm, the next fire. Real breath. In and out. Mine. Because here's the truth, plain and final. You can love your family and still choose distance. You can forgive someone and still file a report. You can grow up in a house where emergencies are used like weapons, and still decide you're not going to be the extinguisher anymore. My name's Aaron. I'm a firefighter. And I don't run toward their smoke anymore. I run toward my own future. The one with air I can actually breathe. The end.